Ukraine's capital has banned public events celebrating the country's 31st anniversary of independence from Soviet rule. Officials cited threats of renewed Russian attacks for the decision. The ban came after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky warned that Moscow could try something particularly ugly in the run-up to Wednesday's 31st independence anniversary. The anniversary also marks half a year since Russia invaded. Authorities say that the ban on public events related to the anniversary will last from Monday right through to Thursday. Kyiv is far from the front lines and has only rarely been hit by Russian missiles since Ukrainian troops repelled a Russian ground offensive to seize the capital in March. Other jurisdictions have also restricted public gatherings. Authorities have also announced an extension to an overnight curfew to run from 4 p.m. to 7 a.m., effective from Tuesday through to Thursday. In Kyiv, the northeastern city that has come under frequent and deadly longer-range artillery and rocket fire. Now, Dr. Alexander Titov is a lecturer in modern European history at Queen's University in Belfast, and he joins us now via Zoom. Thanks very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the programme. What do we know about how Independence Day has gone today in Ukraine?
Well, I think it's gone up as usual. There is military activity along the whole frontier from the south to the east. Kharkiv and Nikolaev are the two cities on the front line, particularly hard hit, and on the Ukrainian side, and Donetsk was also shelled today by the Ukrainian army. That's the regional separatist stronghold. And there was also a big gathering in Kiev, both virtual and in person, to mark the anniversary and also talk about the future. So President Zelensky made several announcements, including that the war will only stop when the whole of the territory is reconquered, including Crimea, which, by the sound of it, will be going on for many, many years from now on.
So this ban on celebrations came on the backdrop of security concerns, fears that Russia could do something quite ugly. Given the symbolism of Independence Day, could Russia have risked doing something like that?
Well, they certainly could, but I'm not sure that. I think Ukraine inside is much more into symbolism and kind of media management. They've been doing extremely successfully with big hits and big data and so forth. I think the Russians have been more kind of grinding it down and going on regardless of the big dates so far, at least. So I wouldn't necessarily expect. There could be provocations from both sides, but around this date. But equally might be nothing will happen because the pattern so far been that they work on their own schedule, the Russians, rather than kind of around kind of big dates and so forth.
So Independence Day is quite an emotional day in terms of connecting with one's country. I wonder if this has inspired more resistance, or 6 months on, people want this thing to end now. Well,
according to opinion polls, and it's obviously have to be caveat that it's very difficult to do opinion polls in a country when a third of the population is actually is somewhere else, displaced or even abroad and so forth. But I think there is majority support for the for continuing the war in Ukraine and for supporting the president and so forth. I think when Zelensky speaks about not going any compromises, no ceasefires and so forth, I think that reflects broader mood in society as well. That at the moment they are quite keen to fight and also believe that they can win, although the facts on the ground not necessarily point to any side's decisive victory anytime soon.
6 months ago, when we were speaking about the consequences of this war, we were speculating at what it might cost in terms of, for Russia in particular, and that whether this was a gamble that was miscalculated. 6 months down the line, we have a clearer picture. How would you assess the cost of this invasion for Russia?
Well, I mean, certainly there have been a very big economic cost, although to be honest, the projections for the Russian economy, short-term and mid-term projections have been revised upwards. So everybody in March, immediately after the invasion, everybody was talking about kind of collapse of the economy, the ruble collapse at the time. You know, they were talking about 15% contraction of the GDP. That's been revised to up to -4% rather than -15%. The ruble been stabilized. The economy has withstood Western sanctions much better than most people, economists included, anticipated in the beginning. Longer term, there are, very serious structural challenges to the Russian economy. In terms of economic side, I think Russia's done better in the short term than expected. In the long term, all the problems still remain, particularly being cut off from the Western technologies and so forth in the Western market. Although it's been successfully reorientating itself towards China and India in particular. But in terms of military, I think there's been a realization now that it's not going to be a walk in the park for the Russian military. Russian military done poorer than even the Western experts believed in the beginning. But at the same time, both sides have suffered casualties. No incentive for either sides to back down. There is a big energy crisis going on in Europe. Inflation is going through the roof. In European Union as well as the United Kingdom and so forth. The cost on Ukraine as well. There's a winter coming. So it's going to be a very, very hard winter for both Russia, Ukraine, and European Union, but mostly for Ukraine as well, because obviously its economy has been hardest hit. So we are here for a much longer period of upheaval than initially thought, even by President Putin himself, probably, most likely. But nevertheless, I think it doesn't change the bottom of the calculus. I think neither side can withdraw now. So we are, whatever, regardless of the cost, this will grind on.
What about back home for President Putin? Because there were demonstrations that were put down. People were struggling to use their bank cards. International transactions became harder. So that life for the ordinary Russian was certainly challenged. Has that improved? And with that, an improvement in the sentiment regarding the invasion?
Well, after the initial shock and that the economy did stabilize, but it doesn't still faces long-term problems, as I said, structural problems, closure of Western technology, closure of Western markets, need to reorientate its energy supplies, in particular to China and India, more than Western Europe. The authorities handle it so far. So we are looking, instead of very kind of immediate collapse or sharp contraction, to a more shallow but longer recession. The authorities still have financial means to alleviate the most urgent problems. But the problem of the kind of support for the war and so forth, there's been a consolidation rallying around the flag to begin with. I think now the problem is not so much kind of rallying a supporter, but fatigue, that basically this is going to go on for a long time. People are not kind of switching off as well, kind of looking out for their own problems. And there is a kind of problem for the the authorities that explaining why it's all done for if it goes on for a long, long time, and also issue of simply kind of needing more support for the troops, needing more people on the ground, fighting men. With the current attitudes, they're trying to recruit more people into the army, but there's been very modest success so far on that front. So it's the people whom the system didn't collapse. It's withstood the initial shock. The long haul, we will still wait to see. I don't think there will be any kind of huge enthusiasm, but neither kind of huge protest either. I think that the system will ride on if it's able to keep going and putting pressure on Ukraine with the kind of means available to it now, which has been committed. It can go on for quite a long time still.
All right, Dr. Titov, thanks very, very much indeed for sharing your insights with us tonight. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
All right, that's Dr. Alexander Titov, who's a European history expert, speaking to us about Ukraine's 31st anniversary of independence from the Soviet Union. There were fears that Russia could have done some ugly things, as was described by the Ukrainian president, but that doesn't seem to have played out, as a number of celebrations did take place across the country.